When my daughter packed that small overnight bag, I didn't think twice about it. She told me she was spending the weekend at her friend Kayla's house, and it sounded ordinary enough. I remember she stood by the door, twisting her braids around her fingers the way she does when she's trying to act casual. She said, "Don't wait up for me, Mom. We're gonna watch movies all night." I smiled, told her to behave, and handed her $20 for snacks. That was it. No argument, no suspicion. Just another weekend. It's strange how ordinary moments can hide something so heavy underneath. Looking back, there was something in her tone, something rehearsed. But at the time, I was tired. I'd just gotten home from a long shift at the clinic. My feet hurt. And I was thinking more about getting dinner on the table than questioning my 17-year-old about a sleepover. She hugged me before leaving. It wasn't one of those tight hugs she used to give me as a little girl. It was quick, almost distracted. I watched her walk down the driveway, texting on her phone, laughing at something I couldn't hear. I didn't know that would be the last easy moment I'd have for a long time. Saturday passed quietly. I cleaned the house, did some laundry, caught up on bills. Around noon I sent her a text. "You good?" She replied a few minutes later. "Yeah, we're baking cookies, LOL." That LOL should have eased me, but it didn't. It felt too light, too quick, like something copied and pasted just to shut me up. I brushed it off and told myself I was overthinking, the way mothers do. By Sunday afternoon, I expected her to be home. She always came back early from these little get-togethers, complaining about her friends being too extra. But this time she didn't show. Around 5, I texted again. "You on your way?" No reply. 6 o'clock. 7. Nothing. My stomach started to tighten. I called her phone. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. Her cheerful recorded voice said, "Hey, it's Bree. Leave a message." I hung up before the beep. My throat felt dry. I tried calling Kayla's mom, but she didn't answer either. I told myself they were busy, maybe out somewhere, maybe watching a movie. But as the hours ticked by, that calm voice in my head faded, replaced by a low, rising panic I couldn't shake. Around 9, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone, willing it to ring. I remember the house felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, all of it just made the silence worse. I finally texted again. "Bree, call me right now. I'm not playing." Still nothing. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, my little girl with that bright laugh and quick smile, somewhere I couldn't reach. By morning, I'd already made coffee I didn't drink and paced the floor until the sun came through the blinds. I called Kayla's number again. This time, her mom answered. She sounded surprised to hear from me. When I asked if Bree was still there, she paused and said, "Oh, I thought she went home yesterday." My heart sank. That pause, those few seconds of confusion, were enough to send my world spinning. I hung up politely, thanked her, and sat down hard on the couch, staring at nothing. I kept thinking maybe there was some misunderstanding. Maybe she'd gone to another friend's house and forgot to tell me. But something deeper told me it wasn't that simple. My daughter wasn't careless. Secretive sometimes, yes, but never careless. By late afternoon, I started scrolling through her social media. Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. Nothing new. Her last post was from 2 days ago. A photo of a sunset with a caption that read, "New Beginnings." I didn't know what that meant, but it made my chest tighten. I tried to calm myself. I told myself she was safe, that teenagers do stupid things, that she'd come home when she was ready. But the truth was, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd lost control of something I'd taken for granted all these years. When you raise a child alone, every decision feels heavier. Every silence feels louder. That night, I went through her room. Not because I wanted to invade her privacy, but because I needed to understand. Her closet was neat, almost too neat. The bag she'd taken was small, yet a few important things were missing. Her favorite necklace, her journal, her old Polaroid camera. Those weren't things you take for a weekend with friends. Those were things you take when you're going somewhere for real. I sat on her bed and held the edge of her pillow. It still smelled faintly of coconut oil and the strawberry lotion she loved. I remember whispering, "Where are you, baby?" But the only answer was the creak of the old house settling. Monday morning, I called her school. They told me she hadn't shown up. That's when I went to the police. I explained everything, her age, when I last saw her, what she said about the sleepover. The officer was kind but calm, almost too calm. He said, "Sometimes teenagers just need space. She'll probably show up." I wanted to believe him, but every minute felt like sand slipping through my fingers. I spent the next day calling everyone I could think of, friends, neighbors, old classmates of hers, anyone who might have seen or heard something. Every call ended the same way. "I'm sorry, I haven't heard from her." I started to feel like I was disappearing into my own worry. Then Tuesday night it happened. I was scrolling through Facebook, half awake, when a message popped up from someone I didn't recognize. The profile picture was just a gray silhouette. No friends in common. The message said only one thing: "You should check your daughter's other page." I frowned, confused. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. But something made me click. That moment changed everything. But that's not where my story ends. It's where it begins to unravel. Because when I opened that link, when I saw those photos, I realized the lie my daughter told me wasn't small. It wasn't a teenage mistake. It was something darker, something planned. And for the first time in my life, I understood what real fear feels like. The kind that doesn't make you scream, but makes you go completely still. When I clicked that link, my hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone. The screen loaded slow, like it was taking its time just to punish me. And then there it was, an Instagram page I'd never seen before, one that used my daughter's picture as the profile photo, but under a name I didn't recognize. The username was something simple, at @briannaray_199. But the photos on that page weren't simple at all. They didn't look like my little girl. They looked like someone older, someone trying too hard to be grown. Her hair was styled different, her clothes were different, and there was this look in her eyes. Not fear, exactly. Not even confidence. Just this empty kind of calm that didn't belong to the girl I raised. I scrolled down. The first few pictures were harmless enough. Mirror selfies, a few group shots, nothing too strange. But then I saw the one that made my breath catch in my throat. She was wearing white. A long white dress, lace around the sleeves, standing next to a man I'd never seen before. He looked to be in his 30s, maybe older. His hand rested on her waist like he owned her. The background showed some kind of small hall or maybe a church. I could see people behind them, smiling, clapping. And then I saw the caption, "Forever begins now." For a long time, I didn't move. My mind went blank. I kept blinking, hoping I'd misread something, that maybe it was a prank or a costume event. But the longer I stared, the more the reality set in. That wasn't just a picture. That was a wedding photo. My daughter had gotten married. At 17. Without me knowing. My first instinct was denial. I told myself it had to be fake, maybe photoshopped, maybe a joke. But the way she was looking at him in that picture, I knew. Deep down, I knew it was real. I clicked on the man's tag. His account was private, but the profile picture showed enough. He was older, maybe late 20s or early 30s, light-skinned with a trimmed beard and the kind of smile that tries too hard to look gentle. The bio said business owner, believer, husband. That word, husband, made my heart pound so loud I could barely breathe. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone against the wall. But I just sat there frozen. My mind went everywhere at once. How did she meet him? Where were they? Why didn't I see it? And then another message popped up. You needed to see the truth, it said. No name. No profile picture. Just that one sentence. I typed back immediately. Who is this? Where is she? No response. I sent another. Tell me where she is right now. Still nothing. The little typing dots appeared for a second, then vanished. I must have sat there staring at the screen for an hour, waiting for a reply that never came. The silence in that moment felt heavier than any sound. I finally got up, paced the living room, and looked at the clock. It was almost midnight. I called her number again, straight to voicemail. Then I called the police station, the same officer I'd talked to before. I told him I'd found new information, that my daughter might have been taken or manipulated by an older man. He said they'd look into it. His voice was calm again, too calm, like he didn't hear the urgency in mine. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face in that dress. I saw that man's hand on her waist. By morning, something in me had changed. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was angry. I started digging. I went through her laptop, her emails, her browser history. I found a hidden folder, password protected. But after guessing a few combinations, I cracked it. Inside were screenshots of messages, mostly from someone named D. They'd been talking for months. The oldest message went back almost a year. The first few were innocent, questions about school, music, life. But then they got deeper, personal. He called her beautiful, told her she was mature for her age. He said her mother didn't understand her. That line cut me open. He was grooming her. I read every message until my eyes burned. He told her she was special, promised her a new life, told her they'd run away somewhere quiet, start over, no rules, no judgment. And she believed him. There was one message that made my knees go weak. He wrote, "The day you turn 18, we'll make it official. I promise. Until then, it's just our secret." But the photos showed she hadn't waited for 18. I printed everything, every message, every photo, and took it to the police. This time, I didn't wait for them to look into it. I demanded action. The detective who met me was different from the first officer. He looked serious, asked questions, and took notes. He said they'd checked the man's information and tracked down the location from the photos. Still, I couldn't just sit and wait. That night, I went back on her secret account. I scrolled further, reading every caption, every comment. And then I noticed something strange. One of the posts was geotagged. It was from a place called Stanton Ridge Chapel. I'd never heard of it. I looked it up. It was 2 states away, in a small town I didn't even know existed. I didn't think twice. I packed a bag, printed the map, and got in my car before sunrise. The drive felt endless. The farther I went, the more my thoughts twisted between anger and guilt. I kept asking myself where I went wrong. How did my daughter, my bright, smart, stubborn girl, end up in the arms of a man like that? I thought about the nights I'd worked late, the times I'd been too tired to talk, the arguments we'd had about her independence. Maybe she thought I didn't care. Maybe he saw that crack and used it to crawl right in. By the time I reached the small town, the sun was setting. The place looked quiet, almost too quiet. The streets were narrow, lined with old houses and closed shops. I parked near the chapel. It was small, white paint peeling off the walls, the kind of place people drive past without noticing. The door was locked, but I peeked through a side window. Inside, I saw rows of chairs, flowers wilting in vases, and a banner still hanging that read "Congratulations, D&B." I felt my stomach drop. It was real. The wedding had happened here. I stood there for a long time, staring through that glass, trying to process what I was seeing. Then a voice behind me made me turn. It was a woman, maybe in her 30s, holding a broom. She said, "You looking for somebody?" I nodded, barely able to speak. "My daughter. Her name's Brianna. She might have been here recently." The woman's eyes flickered with something, recognition, maybe guilt. "Oh," she said quietly. "You must be her mom." I stepped closer. "You saw her?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, couple days ago. She was here with that man. Thought it was odd. She looked so young. But they said they had permission. I didn't want to get involved." "Where did they go?" I asked. She shrugged. Said they were heading to his uncle's place outside of town. Near the lake, I think. I thanked her, though my voice was shaking. She gave me directions, and I got back in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles hurt. The lake was only 20 minutes away, surrounded by trees and empty cabins. As I drove down that narrow dirt road, I kept seeing flashes of her childhood in my mind. Her first day of school, her goofy smile when she lost her first tooth, the way she used to hold my hand even when she pretended she was too grown to need it. When I finally reached the end of the road, I saw a small house. There was a car parked out front, the same make and color I'd seen in one of the photos online. I sat there for a moment, heart pounding so hard it felt like I could hear it echoing in the trees. I didn't know what I'd find inside, but I knew I couldn't drive away. Because no matter what she thought, no matter what lies he'd told her, she was still my daughter, and I was going to bring her home, even if she hated me for it, even if it broke me to do it. The dirt road leading to that cabin felt endless. The farther I drove, the darker it got, and every tree I passed looked like it was leaning closer, listening. My hands gripped the steering wheel until they started to ache. I kept telling myself to stay calm, to think, to breathe, but my heart wouldn't slow down. I could almost feel it thudding in my throat. When I finally pulled up near the house, I turned off the engine and just sat there. The cabin was small, maybe 2 bedrooms, with a porch light flickering like it couldn't decide whether to stay on. The air was thick with the smell of pine and something faintly metallic, like rain on old tools. There was a single car in the driveway, the same silver sedan I'd seen in one of her photos. I knew I'd found them. I didn't rush to the door. I wanted to, but I knew better. I needed to see first, to understand what I was walking into. I stayed in the car, watching from the dark. After a few minutes, the front door opened. My daughter stepped out. She was wearing the same white dress from the pictures. Her hair was down, her face bare, and she looked older. Not in age, but in the way she carried herself, like a child pretending to be someone else's idea of grown. The man followed behind her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. He said something I couldn't hear, and she laughed softly, tilting her head against his chest. That sound, her laughter, broke me. Because it wasn't the laughter I knew. It was quiet, uncertain, almost rehearsed. I realized she wasn't laughing because she was happy. She was laughing because she thought she was supposed to be. I sat there for a long time, trying to gather myself. My first instinct was to rush out and drag her home, to scream at him and make her see what I saw. But another part of me, the rational part, knew I couldn't do that. Not yet. Not without help. I needed proof. I needed to be smart. I grabbed my phone, took a few pictures of the house, the car, the license plate. Then I called the detective who'd taken my case. He answered on the second ring. "It's me," I said. "I found them." He asked where I was, and when I gave him the address, he told me to stay put. "Don't approach them," he said. "We'll send someone." I promised I wouldn't, but I already knew I wouldn't be able to keep that promise. Because a few minutes later, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Through the front window, I caught a glimpse of him. This man who'd stolen my daughter's mind. Talking to her, pointing at his phone, and then he grabbed her wrist. Not hard, but firm. Controlling. She didn't fight him, but the way her shoulders tensed told me enough. I was out of the car before I realized I'd moved. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I walked to the door. My hands were shaking, but my voice came out steady when I knocked. Once. Twice. The door opened. He was taller than I expected. Up close, his face looked older than in the photos. Lines around the eyes, stubble on his jaw, that forced calm smile men use when they think they're in control. He looked me over slowly, like I was some stranger on his property. "Can I help you?" he asked. I took a breath. "Where's my daughter?" His expression didn't change. "I think you have the wrong place." Then I heard her voice from inside. "Mom." She appeared behind him, her eyes wide, her hands trembling just slightly. For a second, neither of us moved. Then I pushed past him and went straight to her. "Bree," I said. "Get your things. We're leaving." She shook her head, her voice small. "Mom, please. You don't understand." "No," I said, trying to stay calm. "I do understand. You've been lied to, manipulated. He's not who you think he is." The man stepped closer, still trying to keep his voice even. "Ma'am, with all due respect, your daughter's an adult. She's here of her own choice." "She's 17, I snapped. "That's not an adult." He smiled. This cold, patronizing smile that made my skin crawl. "Almost 18. She told me you were overprotective. I see now what she meant." I turned to her. "Brianna, look at me. You don't have to stay here." She looked torn, eyes darting between us, lower lip trembling. "I love him, Mom," she whispered. "He takes care of me." "Love," I said softly. "Baby, love doesn't hide you from the people who raised you. It doesn't make you lie. It doesn't keep you locked away." Her eyes filled with tears. For a moment, I thought I'd reached her. But then he put his hand on her shoulder again, and she froze. That was enough for me. I pulled my phone from my pocket. "The police are on their way," I said. "You can explain everything to them." His calm broke for the first time. His jaw tightened. "You shouldn't have come here. Then you shouldn't have taken my daughter." The air between us went still, like the world was holding its breath. I could hear the ticking of a clock somewhere inside the house, the creak of the floor under my feet, and then, somewhere in the distance, the sound of sirens. He glanced toward the window, cursed under his breath, and stepped back. "This isn't over," he said, low enough that only I could hear. Then he walked down the hall. I turned back to Brianna, who was crying now quietly. I reached for her hands, and this time she didn't pull away. "Come on," I said softly. "Let's go home." When the officers arrived, everything blurred together. They questioned him, took statements, made calls. One of them, a younger woman with kind eyes, pulled me aside and said they'd found enough to charge him. that he'd been talking to several underage girls online, that my daughter wasn't the first. My stomach turned. They took him away in handcuffs while she stood there, shaking. I wanted to hate him, but all I felt was this hollow kind of sorrow, because I'd seen it before. Men like him who preyed on trust, who turned love into something twisted. Back at the motel that night, Brianna barely spoke. She just sat on the bed, staring at her hands. I wanted to say something, anything, but every word felt too small. I didn't want to scold her. I didn't want to push her. I just wanted her to know I was there. Finally, she said, "I thought he loved me." My throat tightened. "I know, baby. He said you'd never understand, that you'd hate me if you knew." "I could never hate you," I whispered. "Not ever." She started to cry again, and I pulled her close. For the first time in months, she didn't resist. She cried until she fell asleep in my arms, just like when she was little. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of a long road neither of us was ready for. The next morning, I drove us home. The sun was barely up, and the world looked new again, though my heart felt heavier than it ever had. Every mile between that cabin and our front door felt like a mile between who she'd been and who she was now. When we finally pulled into the driveway, she looked at the house like it was both familiar and foreign. "I didn't think I'd ever come back," she said quietly. "You always had a home here," I told her. "You just forgot for a little while." She nodded, but her eyes were distant. She wasn't the same girl who'd left that Friday with an overnight bag. The innocence was gone, replaced by something quieter, sadder. In the days that followed, the police kept in touch. They said he was facing serious charges, that there'd be a trial. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to hear them. I just needed to focus on her. At first, she barely left her room. I'd hear her moving around at night, crying softly when she thought I couldn't hear. Sometimes I'd find her scrolling through her phone, looking at old pictures, deleting them one by one. I wanted to take the pain away, but healing doesn't work that way. You can't rush it. You just sit with it, day after day, until it starts to hurt a little less. And every night, before I went to bed, I'd stop by her door and say, "I love you." Most nights she didn't answer. But one night, maybe 2 weeks later, I heard her whisper back, "I love you too." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Still, there was one thing that wouldn't leave my mind. One thing that kept me awake long after she'd gone to sleep. That anonymous message. The one that had sent me the link. Someone out there knew what was happening. Someone who'd been watching all along. And if they'd known enough to warn me, what else did they know? The morning light filtered through the blinds, but I didn't notice it. I couldn't stop replaying the scene at that cabin over and over in my head. The man's face, my daughter's frozen expression, the way he tried to stand between us. I'd spent the night pacing the motel room, going over what I would say, how I would approach her, how I would make her understand that she was my child, not his possession. By the time we returned home, Brianna had retreated to her room again. She barely looked at me when I brought her breakfast. I sat down on the edge of her bed and tried to speak gently. "Brianna, I need you to talk to me." She pulled her knees up to her chest, hugging them tight. "I don't want to talk," she said. Her voice was soft, fragile. But there was something else, too. A stubbornness I hadn't seen since she was a teenager arguing over homework. "I know you're scared," I said slowly. "I'm scared too. But hiding from me won't make anything better. Not for you. Not for us." Her eyes filled with tears, but she still didn't speak. I waited, letting her breathe, letting her process. Then finally she whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt you, Mom." "You didn't hurt me," I said, though my chest felt tight. "You were taken advantage of, Bree. Someone lied to you, manipulated you. I want to understand everything, but I need the truth. Can you tell me what happened?" She shook her head. "I can't. Not all of it. Not yet." I swallowed hard. "Okay, but soon. You have to, because you deserve to be safe. And you deserve the chance to see the truth for yourself." She didn't respond. I let it go for that moment, knowing the confrontation I really needed to have wasn't going to happen quietly. It happened a few days later, when the detective called me. "We have him," he said. "He's in custody. He wants to talk to you and your daughter. We can arrange a meeting." My stomach dropped. I wanted him behind bars, far away, never near us again. But I also knew the confrontation was necessary. Brianna had to see him, hear him, face him. And so did I. We arrived at the police station mid-morning. The fluorescent lights were harsh, the air smelling faintly of cleaning products. Brianna clung to my hand as we walked toward the small interview room. She was quiet, her steps slow. I tried to squeeze her hand reassuringly, but she didn't meet my eyes. The door opened, and he was there. The same man from the cabin, older than I remembered in photos, but still trying to look calm. He sat behind the table, arms folded. I could see the confidence he thought he had, but it didn't reach his eyes. I took a deep breath. "This is him," the detective said softly, nodding toward him. "Everything he tells you can be used in court. Be honest, Brianna. You're safe here." She nodded, swallowing hard. I stared at him. "Why?" I asked quietly. "Why him? Why my daughter? What did you think you were doing?" He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that makes you want to throw up. "I told her she was special. She believed me. That's all. That's all," I said, my voice rising. "You lied to her. You took advantage of her trust. You promised her a life she couldn't possibly understand. She's 17. Do you even hear yourself?" He leaned back slightly, shaking his head. 17, 18, a year doesn't change anything. She was ready. I treated her with respect. I wanted to scream. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to stay calm. Respect? You call manipulation respect? You call isolation respect? She's a child. And you broke her. You broke her life. Brianna was silent beside me. Her eyes flicked between us, wide, uncertain. She looked small, like the weight of the entire world was on her shoulders. I knew she felt trapped, torn between the man who had convinced her he loved her and the mother who had always loved her unconditionally. The detective spoke up. "That's enough," he said firmly. "You're here to answer questions, not to intimidate anyone. We'll sort it all in court." He leaned toward Brianna then, voice soft, almost pleading. "Brianna, tell her the truth. Tell your mom what you want." And that was the hardest part. My daughter looked at me, and I could see the hesitation, the fear, the confusion. Then she spoke, barely above a whisper. I thought he loved me. I wanted to believe it. I thought you didn't understand me, Mom. I thought he cared." My chest ached so badly, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I took her face gently in my hands. "Baby, listen to me. You were never alone. I've always understood you. And he lied. He used you. He's not love. Love never hurts like that. Love never hides you from the people who care about you." Tears streamed down her face. She buried her head in my shoulder. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "You have nothing to be sorry for," I said, holding her close. "You're my daughter. And I'm here." Then the man spoke again. "She chose me. She came willingly. You can't change that." I straightened up, looking him in the eye. "No. No one chooses manipulation. No one chooses lies wrapped in promises. You took advantage of her vulnerability. And for that, you will pay. The law will see you for what you are." His calm cracked. For a fraction of a second, I saw anger, fear, and frustration flash across his face. "You don't understand her," he spat. "I understand more than you ever will," I said. "She's my daughter. And nothing you've done changes that." The detective signaled that the session was over. They would proceed with charges. He would face the consequences of his actions. But even as he was led away, I didn't feel relief. Not yet. The confrontation had taken its toll. On me, on her, on everything we had once taken for granted. After he was gone, Brianna clung to me. "I thought I could trust him," she said softly, voice breaking. "I thought he loved me." "I know, baby," I whispered. "I know. And that's why it hurts so much. But you're safe now. And I promise, we're going to heal from this. Together." We walked out of that room slowly. Every step felt heavy, but I could feel her slowly leaning into me again. Her hand squeezed mine, weakly at first, then a little stronger. I whispered, "We'll get through this. I've got you." The drive home was quiet. She stared out the window, lost in thought. I didn't force conversation. I didn't try to fix everything with words. I just drove, keeping my eyes on the road and my hand resting lightly over hers. When we pulled into our driveway, I noticed how different it all looked. The house, the yard, the familiar street. It had always been home, but now it felt like a place that had been waiting for her to come back to reclaim it. Inside, she went to her room and shut the door. I didn't follow immediately. I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, thinking about the confrontation and the weight of what had happened. I thought about the man, the lies, the manipulation, and the way he had nearly stolen my daughter from me. And I thought about Brianna, her innocence taken, and how much work it would take to restore her trust. Not just in me, but in the world. I knew this wasn't over. There would be therapy sessions, police reports, court dates. There would be hard conversations and nights when she refused to speak. There would be moments when we both felt the pain of what had happened, when the memories threatened to crush us. But I also knew this. The confrontation had been necessary. It had reminded her and me that we were stronger than the lies that tried to destroy us. That night, I went to her room again. She was sitting on the bed, knees drawn up, staring at nothing. I sat beside her and just held her hand. She didn't say anything at first. Then, finally, in a small voice, she said, "I didn't know how to come back." "You're here now," I said softly. "And that's what matters. One step at a time, baby. We'll take it one step at a time." And for the first time since this nightmare began, I believed we would be okay. Not because the danger was gone, but because we had confronted it. We had faced it together. And as long as we stayed together, we could survive anything. But deep down, I knew one thing. The next step wouldn't be easy. Healing from this kind of betrayal, this kind of manipulation, was going to take time, patience, and more courage than either of us had ever known. And yet, as I sat there holding her hand, I also knew that we were ready to begin. The day started like any other, though nothing about it felt normal. Brianna and I sat at the kitchen table with 2 cups of lukewarm coffee between us, the morning sunlight spilling softly across the counters. I watched her stir her cup without really seeing it, lost in thought, eyes distant. She hadn't spoken much since the confrontation, and I wasn't sure if it was because she didn't know what to say or because the weight of everything had finally settled in. I didn't rush her. I'd learned over the past few weeks that forcing conversation never worked. She needed time, space, and patience. I leaned back in my chair and just watched her, thinking about how quickly life could change, how fragile innocence could be, and how deeply someone could hurt the one person you loved most. By mid-morning, the phone rang. It was the detective who had handled her case. "Ma'am," he said, "he's been formally charged. Court date set. They're moving fast." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. "Thank you," I said softly. I want to make sure she's okay." "She will be," he assured me. "She's lucky to have you." Lucky. The word stuck in my mind as I hung up. Lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow. I felt guilty. I kept thinking about all the times I had been too tired, too distracted, too busy to notice the little cracks that someone like him could slip into. And yet, here we were, standing together, alive, even after the worst of it. That afternoon, I suggested we go for a walk, just the 2 of us. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of calm that made you think everything could finally feel normal again, at least for a little while. She walked beside me, shoulders slumped, hands in her pockets. "I never thought it would get this bad," she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "I know," I replied, keeping my tone steady. "I didn't either. But it's over now. That part of your life is over. He can't hurt you anymore." Her lips pressed together. I don't know if I believe that yet. I put my hand on her shoulder. "I know it's hard, and it's okay to feel that way. But you're safe. We'll make sure of that." We walked in silence for a while, letting the soft crunch of gravel under our feet fill the quiet. Then she stopped, turning to look at me. Her eyes were red, but there was a determination there I hadn't seen before. "Mom, what if people find out?" "About him?" I asked. She nodded. "They will," I said. "And that's okay. What matters is that the truth is out. He can't manipulate anyone else. The law will take care of that. And you get to rebuild your life. Step by step. Nobody has the right to judge you for what he did. He is the only one at fault." Her voice wavered. "But I feel so ashamed." I shook my head gently. "There's nothing to be ashamed of, baby. You were a victim. What he did wasn't your fault. Ever. You were brave to come back. Braver than you know." She sniffled, finally letting herself cry in the middle of the street. I wrapped my arms around her and held her tight. For a long time, we stayed like that, letting the tears flow, letting the years of fear, manipulation, and confusion wash away little by little. The days that followed were a blur of therapy appointments, police follow-ups, and quiet nights at home. Brianna was withdrawn at first, barely speaking to anyone except me. I knew that was normal. She needed to process, to understand that the world was safe again, that her life wasn't over, that she didn't have to hide. I watched her slowly return to herself. She laughed a little more. She smiled when she thought no one was watching. She even started going back to school, though she kept her head down and avoided the spotlight. It wasn't the same as before, but it was a start. One evening, she came to me with her phone in her hands. "Mom," she said quietly, "I want to delete the photos. All of them." I nodded. "That's a good idea. You don't need to carry those memories with you." We went through her phone together, deleting the images, the messages, the reminders of him. Each one felt like a small weight being lifted from her shoulders. And with each deletion, I felt a little lighter too, as if the house itself was shedding the darkness that had invaded it. A few days later, we received a letter from the district attorney's office. The man had been formally charged with multiple counts: online solicitation, manipulation of a minor, and more. The court date was set. I knew justice would take time, but it was coming. That knowledge gave me a strange sense of peace. Brianna sat with me at the kitchen table as I read the letter aloud. "He's going to prison," I said quietly. She didn't respond at first. Then she whispered, "I hope he can't find me again." "He can't," I said firmly. "You're safe now, and I'll make sure it stays that way." Weeks passed. The threat had gone, but the emotional scars remained. Brianna and I worked through them together. Therapy sessions, long talks at night, and quiet moments where we didn't have to say anything at all. I learned to listen differently, to ask questions gently, to understand her silence as much as her words. And slowly, the fear began to fade. Slowly, trust began to rebuild. Slowly, the light returned to her eyes, just a little at a time. One afternoon, we were sorting through old family photos when Brianna pulled out a picture of her as a little girl, wearing a tutu and a crown she'd made out of paper. She laughed, a sound that was pure and unforced. "I forgot I even had this," she said. "You were always a princess to me," I said, smiling. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes again, but this time they weren't from fear or pain. They were from relief, from gratitude, from the understanding that she was still my little girl, even after everything. We framed that photo and put it on her dresser, a reminder of who she was, who she had always been, and who she could still be. That night, I tucked her into bed, brushing her hair gently from her face. "I'm proud of you," I whispered. She hugged me tight. "I'm proud of you too, Mom," she said. For the first time since that nightmare began, I believed it. Not just the words, but the truth behind them. We were survivors. We had been broken, but we were healing. And we would continue to heal together. I realized something then, something important. The wedding that had happened without my consent, without my knowledge, without my presence, it never truly existed. Not in the way it should have. It was a lie built on manipulation, fear, and deceit. And a wedding built on lies could never stand. Our family, though shaken, was real. And our love, though tested, was stronger than any lie he had tried to force upon us. The road ahead would not be easy. There would still be hard days, moments of doubt, and fears that crept in when we least expected them. But we had faced the confrontation, faced the truth, and reclaimed what was ours. The wedding that never was finally over. And in its place, a new beginning was taking root. A beginning built on trust, understanding, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her daughter. And as I watched Brianna sleep that night, finally peaceful, I knew one thing for certain. No matter what the world threw at us, we would face it together. Always.